Yeah, good evening, folks. Jim Saleam from Australia First Party. I'm speaking tonight with Michael, who is a founding member of the youth organisation known as Australian National Front, which has appeared online in several places. Good evening, Michael.
Thanks for having me.
No worries at all. First up, I suppose, where did the ANF come from? Who are you guys?
So the ANF originally came from some National Socialist leaning circles, namely the NSN. We decided to go a different ideological and strategic route than what was originally done. And that's basically where we came from.
So you've obviously branched out in the direction of an Australian nationalism, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Look, obviously a new group, many things are happening. Can you maybe enlighten us to what you've actually been doing lately?
So we're an activist organization. We focus on great optics and aesthetics, as you can see with our posters and materials and stuff that we've been putting up. We also participate in some training and community building, but overall we would define ourselves as primarily an activist group, doing the raw activism, putting the posters on the street for the everyday Australian to observe in the public spheres.
Do you think that you've actually administered any impact at this stage, or is it early days?
Well, we definitely have had some impact. I've looked at our website analytics, and we've gotten how many thousands? I can't think off the top of my head, but especially in the first few months, we got like many thousands of views, which were exactly in the same time periods that our poster runs and stuff happened. So I know that people definitely searched us up. It's definitely having a physical impact, but mainly recently we've been having more of a digital impact, especially on TikTok. You know, it's a pretty youth-based application. One of our little video clips has recently gotten 35,000 views, which is quite a significant amount of people seeing it. So yeah.
Do you think that the fact that it is an activist orientation is what's actually getting this attention? That it's not just purely the digital world?
Well, yes, and I think that because of the route we've taken and how, I'd say, unique it is compared to like conventional forms of activism, I'd say that yes, it does attract more views, but some of the things we've gotten a lot of views on also haven't always been about the activism itself, but rather the ideological message. Like on TikTok, our most viewed video clip was actually explaining nationalism for like a minute instead of like showing off what we're doing. So yeah.
And do you get a lot of feedback from ordinary people? Are they young people writing into you and exchanging views and ideas with you?
Yes, we've had a lot of likes. I think on that video we have around 3,000 likes. We've had a few hundred comments. A lot of people are commenting quite positively and saying this is like the type of thing we've needed for ages. You know, we love this channel, etc., etc. We've also had a pretty massive surge in recruits, you know, email applicants around the age group of, well, 16 to 13. However, we've had to actually decline active membership for that age range for a lot of different reasons, like we don't want to groom them,
Yes.
you know, like legal reasons, optics, maturity, etc. However, that doesn't mean they can't support us.
No, it certainly doesn't. And do you find that any of this, obviously at that particular age bracket, 13 to 16, you're looking at high school students, maybe TAFE students at the outside. Do you think that there's actually a market in schools? Do you think school kids are listening?
Yeah, they are, and I'm fully certain that there is a growing attitude throughout the youth in that regards. So we've had a lot of applicants, and most of them are from high school. They say they're quite, the way that I can interpret it, they're quite atomized. They don't have many people to talk to, and as soon as they see like something such as ANF pop up, they're like, oh well, this is cool. This is what I've been waiting for ages. It's something that's organized. It's, you know, people coordinating. It's you know, nationalistic.
That actually raises an interesting point, which we can obviously go into now. It's always said, that there's an incredible anti-Australian bias in education along various roads. That Australian history doesn't exist unless it's interpretable as imperial, with a pseudo-Aboriginal background to that, and then multi-culti. But if a lot of young folk are writing in and saying good work, that means that they're actually trying to embrace their Australian identity.
Well, I think the harder the establishment pushes, the more you get like a polarity between the results in the youth. Like you have people who are, full-blown Marxist types, and then you have the others which are turning more nationalist, or even further, like National Socialist. Like, the principle, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Of course.
Well, that's pretty much it.
So it could be, therefore, that the establishment, to use the phrase actually that the Marxists love so much, has created its own gravediggers.
Yeah, that's putting it pretty perfectly.
Well, Karl Marx said that we can't blame him for everything. But I think if it is a surge in youth interest, then it would only be a matter of time before there would be some official opposition to that. Are you aware that that would be the case? And if so, have you folks discussed it?
Are you talking about, as in an opposition to our influence?
Yes.
Or?
Yes, some possible counteraction in schools or other places to deal with. And I'll use the neutral term to a propaganda, which is actually reaching out to people to change their minds, saying it's okay to be an Australian, it's okay to be an Australian, perhaps have a European background, and that obviously that can't be permitted without challenge, can it?
Yeah, well, I do think there could be a degree of backlash. However, I don't think it'd come solely from that specific outlet. It'd come from a variety of different angles. Because it wouldn't be a school teachers, have found out about this evil nationalist group. It wouldn't be like that. It'd just be kind of like, I would say, conventional government harassment that's been done to similar groups. However, I do think that because of the optics we've chosen and the aesthetics, it won't be as easy to target us as you would with some other more extreme groups that are around that don't exactly care about those things as much.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. I think that obviously a constructive politics that does reach out in schools or unemployment queues or somewhere else can only deeply frustrate and annoy those forces that want to challenge. I suppose in the end you will be challenged. Not that that's a bad thing, but I assume that you're fully aware that you will be challenged.
Well, our initial objective was to just try to make an impact throughout Australians in general. It wasn't to specifically target the youth in a propaganda sense or anything. So it's just a kind of extra effect or extra impact that has come alongside other impacts. And because we're, actively saying we're not actually allowing anyone from those age groups in, it won't be that easy for them to say, oh, well, they're targeting the youth and stuff. We're not even recruiting them. So it's like, it's affecting them, I would say, like with their worldview. However, in terms of like active, like involvement and stuff, it's not.
I think we just developed a problem.
What's the problem?
Hang on, I think we might have lost sound. No, we're back.
Okay.
I thought we might have lost sound. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Proceed, please.
Well, yeah, what I was saying is I would say we're having a pretty significant impact by using applications like TikTok and stuff. However, as I just said, it's not in a direct like involvement sense. It's more in a kind of ideological, a philosophical way. And we've only just started our TikTok endeavors, if you want to call it that. And we've gotten probably a total of 50K views throughout mainly Australia, because that's what we've tagged. But it's also people all over the world as well. So, yeah.
Do you think that most people who call themselves Australian nationalists would see your initiative positively? I do. Do you think that it's being perceived in the right way, that it is a fresh initiative?
Yeah, I'd think so. I'd say, unless if they've had their perception of it tainted by people who don't like nationalism or, things of that nature, I'd say that kind of like the default reaction would be, oh, this is a pretty cool group. However, then there's others who'd be suspicious of it, like, oh, a group with aesthetics like this must be run by feds or something like that.
Well, I'm not sure who would say that. We might have some opinions of who that might be.
Yeah.
We won't name anybody. I would take the view that probably most Australian nationalist groups and organisations would certainly support the ANF's effort. Have you, without giving any details, and obviously it's inappropriate to, but have you reached out to other recognised Australian nationalists and said, we're here on the scene and please talk to us?
It's actually been the other way around. We haven't really needed to because we've gotten quite a lot of, because of our outreach, it's kind of just happened naturally that certain groups have discovered us coincidentally. So yes, it is quite eventful. Like there are definitely groups reaching out to us. I can confirm that.
That is good. I was going to raise an obvious point that there is a enormous amount of Australian nationalist ideological material. I can testify personally, if I was to take the oath, that when I was a person at, say, the age bracket 20 or 21, that did not really exist. But now, of course, it actually does. How do you think you would go about embracing that material and integrating it into your work? You're obviously aware of it. How are you looking to do that?
Well, I'd say trying to take the essence, the key points out of it and modernizing it as such. For example, a way you could really get it to affect, especially circles like on TikTok, is by having some pretty concise clips, maybe having quotes and stuff from it, and just basically, get the essence into a clip that thousands and thousands of people see. Because applications like that, and also Telegram, but it doesn't seem to have as much of an impact in terms of outreach as that one does. I think it could be extremely effective in getting those across. If not just having through websites and stuff, you could have references, you could have pages dedicated to like the most important. However, that is subjective, but like having the most important literature up there to educate Australians.
Obviously, you take the education aspect as a very, very important one.
Well, if it wasn't an important one, I wouldn't be here.
We'll take it. Obviously, I think, and I've found it myself just, knocking around and speaking to people, that there's often a great disconnect. Many people are not aware of their country's history. They're not aware of their country's politics. And do you feel that that's a problem for you? And how would you address that? The fact that a lot of Australians, and not just young Australians either, but a lot of Australians simply don't connect with their own country.
Well, yeah, I do think that's to a degree a problem, and I guess it's just a similar answer to the other question you asked, is just trying to, get as much outreach as possible and just showing it to everyone, showing the most essential bits of history, showing what's been hidden, and what's, along those lines. That's all I can really say.
Obviously, in any new group of people, particularly one with a targeted audience, there's the role of generalised outreach. And obviously, you've indicated that you're attempting to do that outreach. And do you think that that will develop in due course into specific activist campaigns with a focus designed to create a particular result?
Well, yeah, because over the past few months, I'd say between January to March period, I'll explain this in another podcast I was on. We went through a bit of an experimental phase, trying different things out, trying different, poster designs and stuff, and it's kind of like throwing mud at a wall and seeing what sticks. And so we've seen what sticks, And in terms of like kind of like specializing and having specific campaigns and stuff, I do think that will definitely happen down the future. However, I don't think we're at that phase just yet.
As you're probably well aware, some Australian nationalists have launched as best they can. It's still early days, even though the issue is very pressing, on the matter of the so-called Aboriginal voice to Parliament. I can tell you Australia First recommends a no vote. We're developing reasons why. Is that likely to be a campaign in which the ANF blokes would be interested? And if so, have they said anything about it so far?
I'd say yes, that's something we'll probably focus on in the future, and it will be something that will, gather interest because it's quite an essential bit of, I guess, campaign to contest, or their campaign to push it, if you know what I mean.
Indeed. In other words, you do look at the idea of contest. If your opponent puts up a particular argument, you wish to argue against that argument. I would assume, is there any debate inside ANF, your various social media and whatnot, talking about this issue?
Not really, no. Not. I mean, in circles in general, on like Telegram and stuff, there's definitely people talking about it, but I mean the voice, that is.
Mhm.
But in terms of just around in general, not really.
Right. Also, too, I don't know. This question just comes from left field for a few reasons. Has there been any comment in ANF regarding the future of Australia, whether or not the current government, as you know, is currently involved in a war? And they're attempting to use Australian military equipment and Australian resources in war in Ukraine, and they're following the NATO line and so on war. Has this issue impacted in any way on ANF or its activities yet, or is it too early for that?
It's way too early. That's all I can really say.
Right. Probably, as you're aware, the organisations and all that of, say, Euro nationalism have come out opposed to NATO, opposed to the European Union, and this false concept of Westernism. It does have an interesting impact here. Do you find any of your members who might be university students come up against this conservative, pseudo-patriotic ideology that's being put out? I read some stuff last week by our ex-Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, that the very definition of Australian patriotism is to get involved in someone else's wars. I take it you haven't come up against that yet, or?
No, pretty much the overall consensus is to not get involved in that.
Right. Is that because you're building resources and attempting to, broaden your contacts?
Oh, as in like not getting involved in wars in general as just a national policy, not as in getting involved in it like as a topic organizationally, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I follow your logic. At the moment, in your workings, have you identified any key issues that you wish to float out into the community, particularly the younger community, that you feel are issues that have to be broached, have to be discussed, things that you're using as recruiting tools?
Well, the majority of our propaganda that's been going around has been mainly kind of like generalized promotional stuff for the group in itself. The issues that have been raised with some of our designs is one like addressing Marxism, for example, and also the drug epidemic throughout Australia, saying reject poison. That's one of our posters. Other than that, it's been mainly, as I said, generalized, tailored towards building up ANF.
In some discussions that I've had with younger nationalist people, the issue of immigration has really come and hit them in the face. Do you find that the young people you're contacting, how are they feeling about that?
A lot of them feel like they're in the position where they are like a little island surrounded by an ocean of, non-whites, non-Australians. a few of them have been bullied in the past, and they've basically sought out a nationalist mindset for their own survival.
You talk about high school and similar intimidation, or just in the community?
Mainly high school.
And does that take the form of actual physical violence?
Yes. There's been a few applicants, well, inquiries, I'll say, who have actually told me their stories, and they've said that they feel, kind of like a bit persecuted, like they're not in Australia anymore.
And of course, if certain lessons are being run the way they're reasonably run, if they speak out, they're the victims of intimidation.
Yeah, they're labeled stuff, and so usually what happens is they try to evade these people. However, they're also quiet at the same time, just for their own survival.
Any of the people inquiring girls, females?
Not yet.
Not yet.
It's largely under 30s males
Well,
in general.
Yeah, that can obviously be a good thing in short term.
Yeah, that's true.
I might submit that in the long term, if a nationalist movement does not attract women, then it does not leap over various hurdles, and that's obviously something for the future. I would assume you've considered that too.
Yeah, down the track. I mean, it's a bit early because women aren't inclined to join these things as such compared to men. But then again, I will say on our TikTok, there have been a pretty substantial amount of women who have actually followed our channel. So there is a somewhat of an agreement in their mindset towards
In
it.
other words, maybe the girls are just a bit quiet at this stage,
Yeah,
and seeing how things develop, perhaps, and you never know, you might get quite a number of women wish to affiliate. Certainly, it's always been the history of nationalist organisations in Australia. There has been a predominance of males. I can tell you that that's certainly true. But there's always been a very, very strong female minority who have been involved at pretty much every level of it, which I would regard as a positive thing. Obviously, that's something for your future, and I'm sure you'll address it when you do. If we just come back to the immigration matter, what is it that the people contacting you are actually seeing? What is it that they think is actually happening to their country?
well, the overall consensus is they think that their people are being replaced, that they're under attack, and they're being surrounded by foreigners who disregard their people, their culture, and pretty much their way of life.
And do they feel maybe competed against in places like universities, things like that?
Yes.
And obviously, have you had any resonance with tertiary institutions? As maybe students contacted you?
A few, but it's like a mix. There's no real specific demographics in that regard.
Early days, in other words, until something bites, you might say.
Yeah.
And obviously, you've. Let's just come back to that other point, that you're engaged in an outreach program, and at some point, I think I said to you that some of that actually becomes political campaigning of one sort or another around issues to increase profile and build support. Have you, at the moment, identified any issues that might be worth turning into campaign points, or again, is that a little bit too early in your work?
Well, I think what's considered right now is the upcoming, voice to Parliament that's going to be coming up soon. Having a activist campaign on that regard would be quite productive, I think.
Mm-hmm. And do you notice that there is actually a lot of support for the no vote?
Yeah, there is, from my personal experiences and conversations I've had.
Yeah, in fact, some people are predicting that yes won't get up, and, which
well, they could.
Sorry.
I think they could just rig it if they really wanted to, but
rigging does happen, as you're probably aware. there was a very famous lady, she's now deceased, pardon me, called Amy McGrath, actually wrote books about electoral rigging in Australia. So it's not unknown. It's hard to say, but I think the more people who vote no, I take it that your group will be publicly advocating no.
Yeah, that's correct.
Right, very good. Well, I look forward to us exchanging some views and ideas on that.
Yeah, well, I think that when it comes down to the Aboriginal voice to Parliament, the most important thing to consider is it's kind of like an excuse or a Trojan horse, you could call it, to have this, what could you call it? This ethnic divide that's been perpetrated by the elite between Aboriginals and whites, trying to exacerbate that and use it against white Australians. And by them trying to change the constitution, it ultimately will have quite a lot of influence on Australians in general, because that means they'll have pretty much full control in a legislative manner once they pass it. And I mean, what they are mainly indicating at is once they have the voice passed, they're going to do a treaty. And then once they have the treaty done, it's just a slippery slope from then. You're on the same wavelength as me.
Would you take the view of some nationalists that many Aborigines or Aboriginal backgrounded persons who may vote for this don't really understand what they might be getting?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it has been pointed out that something like this could alter the actual sovereignty of the continent. In other words, a group of persons might decide to sell certain minerals or enter into certain agreements, or maybe even contract for certain foreign labour under some circumstances to do particular things. In other words, rather than protect any, and I use this phrase very, very loose, any idea of Aboriginal sovereignty, actually destroy all sovereignty. So in other words, it is a Trojan horse against everybody.
Yep, and that's why they're putting such a great effort in campaigning it, is because of the overall slippery slope that it'll be.
Have you followed the words of Jacinta Price? And I have a reason why I'm asking you this.
It rings a bell, but I don't think so.
Jacinta Price is a senator from the Northern Territory, advocates a no vote, but she's an Aboriginal backgrounded person. And she talks most of the time about the fact that Aborigines are a part of diversity, and that essentially Australia should be, and I'll have to use this phrase, one nation, to use Hanson's phrase, in which everybody is sort of the same. And that seems to be a doctrine if she's heading the No campaign. If she's adopted the idea of diversity, you'd have to wonder what the hell she was about.
Yeah, that's a contradiction.
It is, isn't it? It's one of the enormous ones. I take it your blokes have also picked the fact that any Aboriginal person is also confronted by immigration.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean...
Yeah. So these professionals like Mr. Dobson and Linda Burney and Marcia Langton and all that, I haven't heard anything about immigration out of these fine spokespeople.
What'll be funny is if they get their way, the white man won't be their problem, but then the China man and then the Indian will be.
Funny that, isn't it? And
yeah.
I mean, we can joke at it, but we're in the same boat too, let's be quite frank. But you need a sense of humour, otherwise I don't think we wouldn't be Australians if we didn't. But I think you're very right to raise that. I hope that that might creep into your public outreach material.
Yeah. I think that the prime time to consider a campaign against it would be when it's nearing the date, if you know what I mean, because that's when all eyes are on it. Although, like, prior would also be good to, lobby support against it.
Yeah, indeed so. Coming right back very, very close to the start of our conversation, you mentioned that many young people are getting in touch with you and saying it's really great to find a group of Australians on certain places and they want to communicate with you. How hard has it been for the people involved with you to actually locate the theories of Australian nationalism? It's coming on a bit from what we talked about before,
Yeah.
Assimilating those ideas, putting it into a form. Have you found this to be a really big task?
Well, I think that one problem with Australian nationalism is that it needs to be more modernized. So usually what's the most focused on materials is the more, the more national socialist stuff. That's what you mainly see circling around the most because it's the most modernized in compared to Australian nationalism, in my opinion. And so that's one reason why I'm doing what I'm doing right now, is because I'm attempting to have Australian nationalism, catch up to speed and impact the youth instead of, it being kind of like diverted away from a true authentic Australian message.
Well, it's interesting that you raised that again without naming any particular individual. But I've actually seen some people actually plagiarise the works of nationalist writers, lift names from Australia's nationalist past and try to turn them into something else. Attempted to say they believed in ideas that they never believed in. Total misrepresentation. In fact, there's one person. To call him a galah is probably not doing him full injustice, but he actually lifted ideas from some of our material where we talked about labourism, which is one of the core aspects of Australian nationalism going back 120 years. It's one of those things that actually made it what it was, and suggesting that it's something else. Do you think that your particular mission helps to make sure that the true ideas of Australian nationalism flow only into that stream and are not misused?
Yeah, I do think so. I think that, because I'm younger and I'm have my head wrapped around technology more, and we're doing stuff on TikTok, and we're trying to stay as relevant and as modern as possible. I think that it'll definitely have a pretty great impact in keeping the message pure, so to speak.
Well, that's actually an interesting point. Like when we talk about modernism and ideas, obviously our country, the roots of nationalism go back to the 1880s, and that's a long time ago, coming up for almost 150 years. Obviously, some of the icons from that past, they don't mean exactly what they mean now, or they don't have exactly the same resonance, perhaps sometimes, that they mean now. How would you work to take a controversial icon, Ned Kelly, for argument's sake, someone who's revered by Australians for a lot of reasons. I'm not sure whether ANF would want to market him, but let's just assume we were. How would you market him? What would it be that he would actually say now?
Well, let me think. I'd say that a anti-tyrannical stance, and I do think they would be able to market him quite successfully because he's a pretty well-known figure and everyone knows what he means, and because everyone likes him, it's hard to turn that symbol or that icon into a bad thing. It's hard to smear it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, good so. And I think obviously a lot of the symbols of Australian nationalism and our history, just about every aspect, usually by, I'm sure you agree, left forces, anarchist forces, all these forces are attempting to misuse even Australian icons, like even the Eureka flag I have behind me, and suggest it means other things. And so it obviously means every part of our heritage is under attack. I assume you guys take the holistic approach. It's every aspect of our heritage that's under attack.
Yes.
So our biology, our attitudes, our culture, our symbols, our icons, even the way, as I said to Nick Griffin recently, the British nationalist, even the way we Australians butcher the English language is unique to us.
Yeah.
So it's obviously everything. It's a total struggle, if you like. The globalist system is waging a total struggle against Australians. Would you agree with that concept?
Yeah, I do agree.
And therefore, you're saying that a total struggle has to be waged back.
Yes.
And
yeah, I fully agree with that.
I suspected you might, but I'd say that obviously as things develop with ANF on the ground, you obviously meet a lot of different people who are saying they're Australian nationalists, and some who may in fact be members of responsible and proper Aussie-oriented groups. How will you guys, what attitude will you take to those people? I take it it'd be a friendly one. What would you do?
Well, there's no reason to be unfriendly because the overall nationalist scene lacks the activist touch to it, so it's not like we're competing for any turf or anything. It'd be just cooperation as it is.
And obviously you'd be seeking that at every turn with every responsible group of people.
As long as they're responsible.
Indeed. In fact, that's something that I'll also raise with you just to the side, because as you know, there's a big campaign in the media and all that to suggest that nationalist-minded people might actually be criminally minded, or they might want to do violence or something like that. I take it you're very aware of what the media says, and just tell me what your attitude is.
Well, we disavow violence and we are fully aware of what they're trying to say about us, but it's usually our opposition, such as Antifa and radical communists, who are the perpetrators of violence.
Indeed, and luckily you haven't yet been the victim of that. It's always positive. Do you obviously you make it very plain to everyone who contacts you that if you get involved in this group, we are a lawful group?
Yes.
And I have heard from other constructive nationalists that they wish to make that very clear inside their organisations too, that we're not here to invite proscription on fake grounds. And I take it you are aware that you could be monitored by media outlets, even political police outlets, for what you say.
Yeah, I'm fully aware of that, but we have to make a stand.
And therefore, as long as you are lawful in what you do, you mentioned before you put up posters. Well, that's not exactly a horrendous crime, is it?
Well, it's not.
No, hardly. And you, when you do that, you obviously put up those posters pretty responsibly. I think I've seen some pictures. In fact, I've even seen some. And it doesn't appear to me to be in any way placed in the wrong place or done in a way that would upset the community or anything along those lines.
Well, I'm quite pleased to hear that you've seen them indirectly.
Indeed. Rather, price of fame. I've seen the remains of a couple.
Yeah, that's funny.
Which is another matter entirely. Obviously, someone didn't exactly approve of what he or she saw.
Yep.
Obviously, you don't want to give the game away to anyone who is listening who may have an ulterior reason for listening. But has the group managed to expand into many different areas?
Yes, we have.
Obviously, different states, different cities, and so forth.
Yes.
Positive.
However, I will say that my immediate priority is Sydney, but it's a national org, hence Australian National Front. Indeed.
I'd like to just canvass a couple of other very general ideas. In the construction of any nationalist structure, however it's focused, whether it's a general one or a youth structure or some particular structure, it usually occurs that you do actually come up against certain types of opposition. And as things actually grow and more people perhaps attend events and, you might do particular street things. Have you looked at a program to ensure at that level too that your activities stay pretty tight, pretty lawful?
Yeah.
Could you elaborate that on any way, or is that giving away anything at this stage?
Well, I'd prefer to just keep that discreet for the time being.
Correct. So obviously the plan is that the group will become more vocal, more visible, and therefore be something that people can contact and have a liaison with?
Yeah, it will be. I mean, it's still early days, but we've had pretty successful outreach already, which pretty much indicates that the next 6 to 12 months, it'll probably be double, triple, if not quadruple the influence.
It seems to, and I know the great Percy Stevenson always used to say that you can import something occasionally from the outside, put it in the ground as fertiliser for a native plant. Without going into any particular details, why do you think it's been that some people, and I don't just mean funny people with strange ideological predilections, but why some people have looked to foreign examples to inspire their nationalism? Why haven't they necessarily always looked local?
I think it's because they're disconnected with their people and their culture. That's why they're seeking other ones. They take inspiration off of foreign figures and foreign ideologies as opposed to the one that is right in front of their face.
Well, obviously, as I said, it doesn't always mean that a foreign figure is a bad person or some particular idea is not a correct one. But do you think sometimes there's a bit of a tendency to like open up your mouth and swallow it whole without thinking, well, what is this idea? Where does it fit? Can it fit? Or should it even be rejected?
Yeah, I think in terms of like, the morality as such itself, there isn't always an argument. Like the people who are the foreign people and ideologies, there's no argument. However, the relevance is what's needing to be debated.
Right. And do you think that debate is actually being carried on in Australian national circles?
I think that with the creation of ANF, if it isn't already, it will be soon.
I think, obviously, a lot of matters have been in the broader nationalist movement over a long time. Many of these things, different people have looked at something that might come from a particular country, and does this have a relevance here? But sometimes you get people who want to join a group that's, I won't say where or whatever, but I'll pluck something out of the air. It's registered in Switzerland, and they think it sounds good, and they want to be like that and model themselves like that, and all of this, but they lose touch with Australians, and Australian reality. I think it might be a historical problem, maybe in the history of our land. I'm not 100% sure, but it's good to see you blokes are really getting in touch with who you are as Australians and where it all fits. And I take it you really hammer that on the inside too.
Yeah, I mean, what I identify as an Australian nationalist, and it feels like the most authentic label I've given myself to date. It makes the most sense to me, and it feels the most legitimate.
Indeed. Obviously, if I can be grandiloquent, one of our members recently published a 6-volume collection of the works of John Curtin. And I'd say to you that if you're in the tradition of John Curtin, then there's nothing that's un-Australian about you. And that's how I see it from my point of view as well. As we sort of wind up this discussion, there's probably a few things more that you might like to add. And I know that I've conducted questioning here to, put things down. Is there anything else that you think that I've missed in what I've asked you tonight?
Well, I think I'd like to clarify the org in itself. For example, the name, the logo, the 1901 we've used, and things as such. So we've called our group the Australian National Front, not because we're associated with any similar sounding groups, but because of the literal meaning of the name. We're Australian, we're a national org, and we're a front or a spearhead or a activism group pushing against the destruction of our people and culture. In terms of our logo, we have a circle with a shield and a Southern Cross in it, and then it says Australian National Front on the top, then Folk Land Duty, and then on the sides there are lightning bolts. So we chose the shield because it represents defending Australia, and the Southern Cross, which is the symbol from the Australian flag. And then the lightning bolts represents being striking and effective and powerful. It's nothing to do with any ideological symbolism. It's literally just lightning bolts. So that's a misunderstanding some people have had. And the 1901, we chose that as our year because one, it's easier. For example, with the website anf1901.org, it's very easy to remember, as well as it's extremely relevant because that was the year that Australia, federated, and also the implementation of the White Australia policy. And so that's pretty much the explanation of those smallish details in regards to ANF. And yeah, I don't think there's anything else we can add for that one.
Right. And is there anything else you want to say about the group?
Nothing off the top of my head right now. I think we're quite self-explanatory. We're an activist org. We're, doing outreach programs, and we're just trying to build and save Australia.
Well, in an appropriate way, I'm sure that all Australian nationalists in productive and useful groups will assist you as best we can.
I was also going to ask you, would you like to clarify what Australia First Party is for the viewers who are unaware of what it is?
Yes, okay. Look, Australia First Party is a political party organised as an association and also as a registered party in New South Wales. But our definition of party is not simply an organisation that contests elections. Political parties are broad-based things that engage in ideological work, ideological struggle. They're groups that are involved in the community directly, and they may or they may not from time to time contest elections. First point, and then second point, Australia First is in the history and politics of Australian nationalism back into the pre-federation period. And we maintain that Australian nationalism has three essential components: the literary radical nationalists who defined our identity in the 1880s, 90s, turn of the century, the labourists who set up the vision of a working man's land, of equal pay and equal justice and so on, and of course nativism that defines our European background, native to the soil. So Australia First is a bit of a composite of things, and we attempt to work constructively with people who may share some particular part of that or most of that, or do a particular thing inside the broad church of that. So we're very ecumenical, but we only work with reasonable and pro-Australian people. I hope that answers pretty much what your friends would like to know.
I think that's pretty comprehensive.
Thank you. Well, look, I'll wind matters up at this point. I hope we've talked appropriately, that people understand what you're about. And I reiterate that where and when we can help your work, we're very, very pleased to do so. And I hope that ANF will take anything that we may be in a position to give in the proper spirit in which it's intended. So thank you.
Before we wrap up, I just want to quickly say to the viewer, you can find us and all our content on anf1901.org. It's very easy to search up. And if you wish to join, we look forward to seeing your application.